I think one of the reasons this incubator farm has worked is because she isn't an expert in our enterprises, and like she is doing pigs, that is her focus, and we can collaborate on things and work together, but she doesn't have the stress of like, ooh, that's a bad choice, don't do that, but I'm not going to tell you that because it's an incubator farm. And we don't have the like, there's many mentors in the community that I have that I love dearly, and they have really good advice, and every single one of them has one hill that they're willing to die on that I'm like, I don't agree with you on that. And so I think it's been really beneficial to be in a place where both that is her attitude and there isn't that like, I've been doing this for 40 years and now you're coming in and trying to raise sheep and you're doing it wrong.
Welcome to the 265th installment of Ear to the Ground, the Land Stewardship Project's podcast on family farming, regenerative agriculture, regional food systems, and local democracy. I'm Brian DeVore, editor of the Land Stewardship Letter. Dana Burtness calls the incubator system she and her husband Nick Nowen have set up on Nettle Valley Farm a kind of informed sink-or-swim experience. And the first two incubatees to pass through the program appear to be, at the least, treading water vigorously as they take the next step in their farming careers. Bailey Lutz and Heidi Eager recently wrapped up a 3-year stint at Nettle Valley, which is a pasture-based livestock operation in southeastern Minnesota's Houston County. Burtness says that when she was launching her own farming career about a decade ago, she benefited greatly from being on an incubator farm. It not only allowed her to make mistakes without the financial burden of owning land and infrastructure, but helped her decide what type of farming she did not want to do. Burtness makes it clear Nettle Valley's incubator is not an internship, job, or apprenticeship. It's set up so that beginning farmers can share land and equipment as they run their own enterprises separate from Nettle Valley's main business. In return, incubatees provide 12 hours of labor per month to Burtness and Nowen's livestock enterprise. Communication is key to making it work. During the incubator period, there are weekly check-ins and an off-farm mediator is used to deal with conflict. Lutz and Eager, who are both in their mid to late 20s, say their experience in Nettle Valley has been an invaluable way to make mistakes without being exposed to the risks that come with owning land and infrastructure. Burtness, for her part, says besides having the opportunity to support the next generation of farmers, the incubator program provides Nettle Valley a chance to better utilize its land base. Burtness and Nowen are raising heritage breed hogs for direct marketing on about 10 acres of pasture, and would eventually like to use 67 acres of grass-pastured and silvopastured land they have access to. Lutz's Listen More farm raises goats, and Eager's Radical Heart farm produces sheep and chickens. Burtness says having multi-species grazing present on the Nettle Valley operation helps make better use of the landscape, much of which is hilly and marginal. After a Practical Farmers of Iowa field day that was held on Nettle Valley Farm in late summer, I chatted with Burtness, Lutz, and Eager about the incubator program. Burtness started out describing how the program is set up and how it's produced benefits not just for the two beginning farmers, but for her and Nowen as well.
Yeah, so 3 years ago we started our incubator farm program model, and the idea there is that it's not an internship, it's not a job, it's not an apprenticeship. Young farmers come and stay with us and share land, share equipment, and are able to really launch and grow their own enterprises with the goal of them moving on and starting their own farms, renting their own farms, hopefully in the area. When I was a young 20-something vegetable farmer, I was able to be a part of an incubator farm program, and I was able to make really good mistakes that maybe would have been pretty tough to weather had I had a mortgage and a tractor payment and the stress of owning and managing an entire farm. So that gave me space to sort of grow a business. Also, vegetable farming on rented land over time let me figure out that I don't actually want to be a vegetable farmer. And that's another important role of incubator farm programs is maybe you think you want to be a cut flower farmer, but in the past you've worked on cut flower farms. But once you are the cut flower farmer and you're in charge of everything, soup to nuts, maybe you don't like it so much. Maybe what you really want to do is, I don't know, medicinal mushroom growing or something. So I think it's an important place to be able to try those things out before committing to a certain landscape and a certain financial obligation.
And it would seem like, just from the little tour I saw here, you've got Bailey and Heidi who are incubating with you now, and they're doing sheep and goats. That means you don't have to be a sheep and goat farmer. You can specialize in what you do really well, which is raising hogs, it sounds like.
That's exactly right. And I think the future of farming, we need to move more into collective, collaborative farming. I'm not talking about communes necessarily, but I do think we need to be able to farm in a way that doesn't force us to do everything all the time. We need multi-species grazing to happen. We need people helping each other out with their enterprises, but that doesn't all have to happen on a small family farm or a nuclear family farm either. And I think this is our way of dipping our toe into experimenting. Well, what does that look like? Because this land does need sheep and goats and eventually needs cattle and it needs pigs and it needs all these things, but I certainly don't want to manage all of those enterprises. I know myself well enough to know that I need to do one, maybe two things and just focus on that. And this is a way for hopefully everyone to benefit. I also just really love learning about other people's enterprises and just looking out my kitchen window and seeing the Heidi's pastured broilers munching away on grass and bugs and organic feed, and it just brings me a lot of joy. And then also to know that I don't have to do the chores.
Just in the short tour that we did, it was really fun to have them. It was like we got added value for our dollar, our tour dollar, because each person can talk about a certain particular way of managing the landscape and the way livestock interact. And that was kind of a neat way to do it, I think.
I agree. And each of us has a different sort of philosophy. I mean, it all aligns pretty well, but each of us has a different philosophy and approach to how we want to farm, and we have different relationships with the land and the livestock. And I think I've learned a lot from Heidi and Bailey over these last 3 years, and I'm really grateful for the experience.
Yeah, can you just give us a thumbnail of kind of logistically how you have the incubator set up?
Yeah, so this is our first 3-year cohort now is coming to a close for the Incubator Farm program, and it's been a real steep learning curve. I mean, we went into it with as much intentionality as we could for doing something that we had never done before. So we did know a few things right off the bat. We wanted to make certain expectations really clear about how, you need to bring your own skills and entrepreneurship and things like that to the farm. We did know that right off the bat we wanted to have an off-the-farm mediator, because, I mean, conflict is normal. When, my mentor Liz in Decorah always says, if you're not in conflict, you're not in community. And so we knew from the get-go that we wanted to have somebody who understood farming and knew all of us and could act as sort of a facilitator and a mediator if necessary. And so we asked Martha McFarland of Hawkeye Buffalo Farm to be our house facilitator, our program facilitator. And so that's really helped. And then, I think if starting this next cohort, we'll have a lot more things written down. Before, it was a lot of discussions, but this year, I've already got like a 10-page document for the next group of incubatees, because a lot of conflicts come from hidden expectations, and these last 3 years have really helped us figure out what our own hidden expectations are. Like, for instance, one of our incubatees had more of an understanding that it would be, an incubator farm is a safe, secure place, and that's fairly protected. And I guess we've been thinking of it more as more of like an informed sink or swim opportunity. So we'll tell you all the reasons that you shouldn't do a cut flower farm here because of the deer pressure and the lack of facilities. But if you really want to, and you want to try some innovative approaches, like, go for it. It's your opportunity. And so just even something as simple as that, now we have that written down and we have that described. So someone could read through that 10-page document and have a pretty good sense of, am I okay with this level of communication? Like, at least especially for the first few months, we do weekly check-ins, and we have some like conversational cues about conflict, and that might not be a good fit for somebody. But my goal is that long-term, we need a huge nationwide network of these incubator farms so that people can find what's a spot that's a good fit for them.
I then talked to Bailey Lutz and Heidi Eager about their incubator experience on Nettle Valley and why it's been a key step in their farming journey. Eager started out describing what drew a suburban kid from St. Paul to a life of raising livestock amongst the woods and hills of Minnesota's driftless region.
I had a nice big backyard, but my parents are very confused that I'm farming because I hated going outside. I'm a mosquito magnet, which is one of the reasons I love being in the driftless, is there are less of them. But I went to college and got involved in the student organic garden at the University of Minnesota Morris, and then started doing farm internships from there. I did 7 different farm internships. There was a season in the middle there where my sister and I grew a half an acre of vegetables at a different incubator farm, and we learned that we didn't like growing vegetables. We were on really dead soil, and so it was a really good visceral example of, animals are really important, fertility is really important, soil health is really important. So we both took a step back. She went and did more office nonprofit experiences. I worked at a couple of diversified and livestock farms and totally fell in love with sheep.
Yeah, similarly to Heidi, I grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis. I wasn't a particularly outdoorsy child, but I loved Animal Planet and Discovery Channel and wanted to be a veterinarian when I grew up. And then as I got older, I was really interested in conservation biology. I had this lofty goal of working with Amur tigers in Russia and China and kind of helping reestablish those populations, and got to school at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and worked in a lab in the entomology department that was working with biological pest control, specifically with parasitoid wasps. And I was managing their greenhouse, growing soy and wheat and corn and various native plant species. That kind of greenhouse work brought me to a conversation with a farmer at a co-op in Minneapolis that I was working with, and just talked to him about what his farm looked like. And I started volunteering in his greenhouse in the spring. Then that turned into a work share for my CSA, and I was there throughout the season and just fell in love with doing really hard, dirty work. I'd been working in restaurants previously, which is a very different type of really hard, dirty work. But working in the field, something just really captured me, and I found a season-long apprenticeship on a diversified farm in central Minnesota and really fell in love with the goats there and have my herd of goats now.
So my understanding is you're in the 3rd year of this. It's a 3-year incubator type setup. Give me an idea of Heidi, you're doing sheep and you're doing goats, Bailey. So what have you, I guess, now that you're at the end of this, you're kind of wrapping up a little bit this 3-year. We're kind of in the end of the summer here, so be wrapping that up. What was some of the biggest surprises when you first thought you were going to start doing something like this? What have you learned, and what some of the surprises, both pleasant and unpleasant, I guess?
Specific to the farming itself, I kind of had this wake-up call of sorts that to make a living raising livestock, you really need to do it at scale. I feel a lot of kind of models that are really visible in a lot of places are not to diminish the farming that they're doing, but it's a lot of their work is more outreach and communication to people, and that's where so much of the income is coming from. And there's a lot of off-farm income coming in too to support the farming, which is great. There are lots of different ways to live. But for me to support myself entirely as a farmer with all of my income coming from my farm enterprises, I needed to do things at scale. And so to just kind of have that worldview kind of get shaken up a little bit as I started to do things for myself. Okay, I don't want an off-farm job, so I need to make things financially viable with my farming endeavors. Was kind of one of the first big surprises more generally.
What about you, Heidi?
I have done a lot of farm internships, and so I've seen a lot of things that surprised me. And then when I was here, I think maybe just how, especially during COVID, having the sheep was just so grounding. And I love sheep and I love their personalities, but I think I was surprised by how deeply I feel connected to the sheep. And I love farming because of landscape change and ecological health. And I was expecting to like my sheep and to enjoy what they could do for the land, but I don't think I was expecting to feel so grounded just by being around them, I guess.
Yeah.
Describe a little bit your enterprises.
So I have 9 Katahdin ewes there, and I raise 100% grass-fed lamb and mutton, and I sell direct to consumer. So usually whole animals, whole lambs, and then bundles of mutton. And I think one of my great life's crusades is to help people realize that grass-fed mutton is really good, and it's not the thing that your grandma told you horror stories about.
I have 13 Kiko and Spanish does, and they're resulting 21 kids. So I raise goats for meat. I like to call it forest raised because that's where they are. They're in the woods. And along with that comes some prescribed grazing work. Right now at the incubator farm, it is not paid. It's something, though, that when I leave Nettle Valley, that it will become a fully fledged enterprise. And to do that very successfully, you need a lot more than 13 does and their kids. So I definitely plan to grow significantly beyond that and continue selling meat, which has right now been direct to eater. But then this coming winter, I'm getting into some wholesale accounts with co-ops in the cities. And that's kind of the focus I would like to take to is wholesale accounts, because my strong suit is not customer service. I much prefer hanging out with the goats than I do sending emails to customers, which some people are really good at, and I applaud them. And I'm like, how do you do this so well? What does it take? So I'm much more excited to keep growing the prescribed grazing aspect of my business.
This incubator system, I would think, would be a great way to, frankly, make mistakes, making some cheap mistakes, it sounds like.
I would definitely agree with that. I think I didn't have as good of an understanding of biosecurity, which is a little unfortunate for the people who come after us, but learned a lot about biosecurity, learned a lot about what I'm looking for in breeding stock, and so being able to start on a really small scale, not having to buy 40 ewes to pay for a farm mortgage, being able to just slowly grow and then learn.
Yeah, I would echo all of what Heidi said. Just the opportunity to figure out is this actually what I want to do? How can I modify things right now that won't impact me long term, moving forward? Being able to get your business to a place where you can capitalize it moving forward when you do have a lot more overhead costs is really great. Yeah, I think if I were trying to start a farm on land I owned, it wouldn't happen, mostly because the reality of purchasing land right now is terrifying. So being able to take this time to start my business and figure out what the future can look like while I'm kind of in this protected limbo kind of area has been really great, because it's allowed me to think pretty hard about a lot of different things, especially biosecurity. Like what Heidi is saying, that's something that I think we've all really benefited from being here. Is it kind of coincides really nicely with COVID concerns of how do we protect each other, and how do we protect the people coming after us too.
Yeah, what's one or two mistakes that you made here that were I'm glad I ain't making these mistakes on land I'm farming or I'm owning or renting somewhere?
This is not a huge mistake. It's not a huge deal, but I have sheep that have hoof rot, which is, a pretty common, very manageable, not a huge deal, but knowing that is something that I can avoid if I choose breeding stock very carefully. I'm going to a farm that hasn't had animals in 10 years, and so if I don't buy an animal with hoof rot, I will never have hoof rot, which is very nice.
Yeah, so biosecurity for sure is a huge thing for me too moving forward. I had bought my original breeding stock from some folks who had a disease pop up in their herd after talking to other experts of all kinds, farmers, vets, etc. It's okay, I would not have made the choice that I made in the beginning had I known, had a much more complete picture than I thought I had in the beginning. So moving forward with a clean slate of a new farm that hasn't had animals on it for a long time or ever is going to allow me to start over with being really selective with who I bring on and being able to have a very intense biosecurity protocol moving forward to protect my animals and goats and other herds in other places.
Dana kind of described her idea behind this incubator. I think it was really interesting how she kind of described it, in that sometimes people think of an incubator and they think, well, this is a risk-free, you're just going to have everything taken care of kind of thing. She sees it more as, no, you are going to be exposed to some of the risks, you're a little bit on your own on some things, but we're providing a place to make some of those mistakes and that kind of thing. Is that kind of the way you see it?
Yeah, I think she says informed sink or swim, which I really like. Yeah, it's been really great to... I think one of the reasons this incubator farm has worked is because she isn't an expert in our enterprises, and she is doing pigs, that is her focus, and we can collaborate on things and work together, but she doesn't have the stress of ooh, that's a bad choice, don't do that, but I'm not going to tell you that because it's an incubator farm. And we don't have the there's many mentors in the community that I have that I love dearly, and they have really good advice, and every single one of them has one hill that they're willing to die on that I'm I don't agree with you on that. And so I think it's been really beneficial to be in a place where both that is her attitude and there isn't that I've been doing this for 40 years and now you're coming in and trying to raise sheep and you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I know I've made some choices that other people have witnessed me make that they wouldn't have made, and no one said anything. And then, dealing with the consequences of my choices, I haven't made those choices again. And I think, just with my own personality, I learn a lot more from experience than I do someone telling me something, which is definitely coming from their experience, and that's so awesome. And something definitely solidifies within me when I have to live through it myself. So yeah, I think had I been in a place that was a little more ooh, I don't think you should do this because I see this happening, it probably wouldn't have been as good of a fit as it has been here, to just kind of make my mistakes and learn from them, and also just be able to kind of dream a little more and push my limits, because no one else is directly involved with what I'm doing. We obviously do impact each other in certain ways, but ultimately I think we're all able to kind of do our own thing, which has been really great.
One of the things that struck me on the tour here was how well Dana and Nick are making use of what would be considered marginal land. It's not prime corn, soybean land, and that is so important when it comes to land access for beginning farmers. If they can find a way to add economic value to what's not considered prime farmland, it seems like a great place to learn how to do that, and you're using species that can do that. That must be a really important lesson, that because people talk about, beginning farmers can, through building soil health and using some creative methods, can add value to marginal farmland, but they're kind of doing it here. That must be, I would think that would be a really good eye-opener, kind of first-person connection there.
Yeah, it's been good experience to be on land like this, and I would say that one of the biggest impacts to me is it really changed the type of farmland I was looking at, and the farmland that I thought was possible. If you can't afford to buy $10,000 an acre corn land and turn it into pasture, but you could buy woods and turn it into pasture, not only does that meet my goals more of wanting to improve, I guess both would improve habitat. But yeah, it made accessing different land feel feasible and possible.
It has been a really good experience to be operating in land that we wouldn't maybe traditionally farm, and it's also kind of fed into a lot of my frustration around why land prices continuing to skyrocket, and they're not making any more land, but this isn't something that should be commodified in the way that it is. So it's honestly been a little disheartening to explore land that I would own eventually, and trying to figure out what that can look like, knowing that, like, okay, even if I am buying wooded land, there's someone who wants to, like, hunt on the weekends who can buy it for 3 times as much as I could realistically afford to buy it for. And so it's just like, yeah, being here has raised a lot of, like, conversations around the realities of land access for all kinds of people. Like, I don't want beginning farmers to have to buy marginal land and spend half their career improving it so then it can be like really awesome land. I want people to be able to buy really healthy, productive land to begin with and do even more incredible things with it.
So what's next for you folks?
So I am renting land just 10 minutes away from a really wonderful landowner couple who are Land Stewardship Project members. Yeah, so they're landowners. They have a really beautiful chunk of land that used to be pasture, but they've never raised animals. So I get to rent a little dwelling from them and then put my sheep there.
I've been working for organic vegetable farmers in Decorah the past 3 years, and I have some friends who used to live in Decorah but moved out to Wyoming a few years ago who have 18 acres and a cabin, and we're really stoked to get some people living in the cabin again, and they're even more excited about goats being there. So that's my next place. They just moved in there this August, and will be establishing a little bit of infrastructure for the winter. It's not going to be a forever place, but it's definitely another good stepping stone to a forever place.
For more resources on ways beginning farmers can access farmland, see the podcast page for Ear to the Ground episode number 265 at landstewardshipproject.org. There, you'll also find a link to episode number 261, which describes how Nettle Valley Farm is utilizing silvopasturing to improve pollinator habitat while producing meat profitably on marginal land. If you have comments or suggestions about this podcast, contact Brian DeVore at bdevore@landstewardshipproject.org, or you can call 612-816-9342. By the way, it helps us greatly if you can give Ear to the Ground a rating on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you utilize. Thanks to Laura Borgendale, a Western Minnesota musician, for Ear to the Ground's theme music. And a special thank you to all of Land Stewardship Project's members who make initiatives such as this podcast possible. If you're not a member, visit landstewardshipproject.org to learn how you can support LSP. Thanks for listening.